Welcome to the Amazon's podcast. I'm Glenn Young, owner of Amazon's Fitness Magazine. Celebrate the female physique. Subscribe to Amazon'sFitMag.com. The podcast is brought to you by GPS Photography and Video. Why photography and video? Because a photo's worth 1,000 words, video's worth 1,000,000. GPSPhotoandVideo.com. My guest, someone I've been trying to get on the podcast for a while, reaching out. Great conversations back and forth, and now she is here. 7-time Olympian, IFBB pro women's bodybuilder, Mayla Ash. Mayla, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Glenn, for your patience and allowing me to come on.
Well, I didn't want to come off as like a stalker or someone trying to chase you, but I'm like, I knew you were a key element to the success of the podcast and really to the magazine, because more women's bodybuilders get behind it, as I like to call them, the Amazons, and all of you, all divisions I feel are Amazons, the better it's going to do, because that's a statement in of itself.
Yes, it is.
Marketing. So, I mean, you can make all the magazines and books, whatever you want to, but if no one's behind it, that doesn't really matter.
That is true. That is true. But I do appreciate the fact that you are right. I'm like, me and you have been going back and forth. I hate to say it, and it's just shameful, but for years.
Yeah, that's how I've been in your DMs a minute. I'm like, you come out like, well, dang, boy, he really chasing her. But yeah, I'm so thankful that you are here now, and
I'm thankful that you didn't give up on me. I'm like, it got to the point I was like, you know what, I got to start doing better, and I need to start making time for these things, because if you're supporting the division, and it's a division that recently became my home in 2020, and I love this division, and I have a hashtag here to stay. And I really want women's bodybuilding to be here to stay. And so anytime that there's somebody who is supporting our division, anybody there who is behind it, anybody who can see the beauty of this division, I am thankful, and I will do everything to help support us. So I thank you very much for allowing me the grace of coming onto the show after so many. I can't this year. I can't this month. Oh, I want to. Oh, I can't this month. So thank you very much, Glenn. I appreciate you.
It's me who owes you the thanks. So I'm glad. Let me start by asking, how are you feeling?
Actually, I am finally at a good place. After my car accident in 2023, literally 3 days after coming back from Romania, I'm like, it was a major car wreck. And I struggled in the beginning, and then I got better. But unfortunately, things didn't go as planned in 2024, and injuries and stress and complications, not only with my injuries, but with just the process in general, got to a place that my doctors, they did a 180, and they were just like, we see that we were well enough to actually get back to normal life. Mm-hmm. But in hindsight, now we're seeing that your body wasn't really ready to deal with the stress of doing an actual cutting prep process. And so they were just like, we need you to pull up out of the season, and, let's do some reassessments and let's get some things done. So, it was painful for me. Mm-hmm. But I was thankful that I have people in my life that finally, gave me the right mindset, that it was just like, okay, it doesn't make you less of an athlete if you have to take that knee for healing, and it's okay to not be okay. And so it took me a minute to be okay with that. And so now I'm like, I took the rest of the last year off, begrudgingly.
Well, I mean, you gotta let your body heal. You gotta
right. But I always tell people there's a difference between a competitor and an athlete, and I think when a person has an athletic heart, it's hard. Even though back in your mind, this is the best thing for you to do, but that fire in you was just like, but you can power through this. Right. So it took a moment to actually listen to people who were in my corner and had my best interests at heart to tell me just like, you know what, in all honesty, you shouldn't have. You should have taken the entire year off. And so it was just like, so I took that time off, healed up, reset my mind, refocused, recalibrated some things. And so I'm in a good place. I'm in a good place and I'm happy. So
like we said, 7 times you've been on the Olympia stage, and it's addictive, obviously. And once you've been there once, you got to get back. You got to get back because
7 times in 2 divisions. Right. So just like, I'm like, it is a rush, and people don't understand, you know, it's just like, you know, a lot of people, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, every time I got that letter that said, congratulations from the Olympia committee, congratulations, you qualified, the goosebumps, the hair raising. And I tell people, I was like, it is an honor and it is so thrilling every time it happened for me. You know, I'm just like, people are like, well, you know, you've been so many times. I was like, the feeling never changes. Yeah. It's such an honor because it is the upper echelon of this sport.
Best in the world.
Right. You know, I'm just like, no matter what has transpired, no matter what has happened, no matter the evolution of the sport, it is, like you said, it is the best of the best. And to be a part of that, a part of history, I'm like, it's, you know, it's surreal. So.
And the rush part of it is 7 times you inked that contract.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah, I'm just
everybody gets that. Some people never get one, you know. For you to be there 7 times, it's incredible.
Yes, it is. It is so incredible. I'm thankful. I'm very thankful.
When you talk about women's bodybuilding and muscle maturity, it's just the longer that you guys compete, the better you seem to get. And Michelle Brent, you know, she's 60 and she's contemplating doing the Masters, and it's just amazing to see how long you guys can hold it. It's one of those things, you know, it's something that takes time, but a lot of people are trying to rush it. You can't rush the process.
Exactly. You know, and like it's I think that's one of the things that it really breaks my heart to see is that you have individuals who don't understand, you know, like for me, every now and then I do like a transformation kind of comparison, because a lot of people don't realize that I started in this sport in figure and I grew into women's bodybuilding. And so when I show people pictures of what I looked like when I was in figure, they're just like, well, who's the woman standing next to him? Like, that was me. And they're just like, you got it. I'm like, this doesn't happen overnight, you know? And this idea that, you know, people, they spend, and it's not like you can't do it, but I think for women, especially for us to keep the allure of a woman with muscle, to keep that, the rush that so many people are trying to do to get there overnight is just, you know, it breaks my heart because I see people with beautiful shape and beautiful symmetry and they rush into it. And then all of a sudden their whole look has changed, that things that were their attributes are gone, you know? And I tell people, like, this took time.
Yeah.
This muscle maturity, this idea, you know, that people have this mindset, well, you just need to get as big as possible. Well, you know, you can bring somebody in and let them rush and get as big as possible, but new muscle will never outdo muscle maturity. So somebody who has been doing it, lifting consistently, dedicated for years after years, there's a 3-dimensional look to that muscle that, I'm sorry, you just can't get overnight just putting on mass, you know, and you put it next to that muscle maturity. I'm like, it's like night and day. So, but that's what I tell people. I'm like, this is the one sport where the age, it's like wine. You get better.
It's not beer. You're exactly right. It's not a microbrew. This is wine. And
Right. You know,
at all
it's
time,
like
yeah.
a beautiful wine. You get better. You get better. And so, you know, as long as you're training smart,
Mhm.
we can be in this sport for quite some time and make it and still look fabulous doing it. So yeah, I'm like, I'm impressed about Michelle too. So
And not to stay on the alcohol narrative, but hey, every liquor, cognac, vodka, it has to be aged, you know. And
every quality,
that's just
yes.
the way it
Every
is.
high caliber, high
That's it.
quality.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, beyond liquor,
Yeah.
everything that
Yeah.
is taken care of, cars,
Mhm.
clothes. I'm just like, I'm like vintage. It has a higher value to it. It's a better quality. But yeah, you're right. Alcohol and beef. There's nothing
Yeah.
better than an aged steak. Come on.
Now, and you being from Texas, how do
No,
you
not
have your
from
steak?
Texas. I just live here.
You just live there. Okay, yeah, because really you're from Chicago, right?
There you go.
What
But
caused,
right.
well, I guess your job caused you to move to Texas.
Yes, it did. It did. But you're right. I'm just like, I got down here and I was quickly educated. Oh, you
Yeah.
can't get a good steak from up north. And I was like, steak is steak. And then all of a sudden I had one. I was like, on behalf of all of us from up north, I apologize.
So how do you have your steak? Well done, medium
Oh
rare.
God, well done. Just why don't you just eat a shoe for goodness sake? No, no, I like my steak medium rare. I like it injured. Not bleeding. I just want it injured. So I need just I need a bright pink in there, not
Uh-huh.
bloody, but you know, so that I'm like, you eat a steak the correct way, cook the correct way, it melts in your mouth. And that was something I honestly can say that I did not learn until I moved down here and
Yeah.
had a quality steak cooked the correct way. And so now, no, I get highly offended. Did you just put your shoe on the table? What is this? You know,
Well, let me go ahead and apologize because I like my steak well done.
no, and it's, you know what, to each his own. You know, I have a friend that she likes her steak literally
Uh-huh.
burnt, like she likes a char on it. I'm like, to each his own. It was just like,
The 2025 season is about to kick off with the
yes.
Triple O Dynasty on April 4th. How are
And
you feeling? What's your
I
thoughts?
am I'm feeling very good. So I'm excited about the season. I took some time to reflect and um, I told my friends, my support system, that I was just like, this year I don't want to get on stage unless I'm ready. I was like, so you know, I said until then, I was like, I said I'll just go through it like I always do. I'm like, I tell people every season. Are you going to, so what are you going to do? I'm just like, my body's going to tell me, my passion is going to tell me. I said, right now I'm going to get back to what I love to do. And that is to just train without any kind of agenda. And
Right.
so coming into 2024, you know, I was training with no agenda. And then I jumped into that season, but I didn't have people to tell me you're not really ready. So this year I was like, do not let me do that. So, um, I'm going to have to tell you that in a minute. You have my hashtag, my incorrect. You missed the A, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
there's a double A in there, but that's okay. I was just like, people will
That's
be
because
trying to find
I
me.
was streaming it.
I know that's why I was like, people are trying to find that. They're gonna find. But the thing is that yes, for 2025, I'm at a good place, and so you know, I went back and forth about whether or not I was going to compete this season because
Mhm.
I'll be honest, last season was kind of traumatic for me. You know,
Oh yes,
it
everything.
went through, you know, I went through a lot of stuff. Anyway, but this year, yes, I'm happy to say that I am going to compete. Um, my first show that I wanted to do was New York.
Uh-huh.
But my process has been going really well. And so I'm here to announce that I am going
Hold on,
to,
wait a minute. Let me give you a little drum roll. All right, go.
I am going to jump into the Triple Dynasty, the Triple O.
Whoa,
So,
whoa! It's in 2 weeks.
yes, I know. I'm like, I
Oh,
didn't
that's
say.
why you all covered up in the baseball jersey and everything. I see
I'm
it.
not. I'm not saying that I'm like, I know it's in 2 weeks. I didn't say that I wasn't going to be ready because I said before, I'm not planning to get on stage unless I'm ready. But the reality is that the process that I'm going through this year to get ready for a show is completely different than what I've done over the past years as in any division that I've worked in. And so I actually dialed in much faster than I planned. And so it's nice to see the body respond the way that you know that it can when you have the right process in place. And so it got to the place that my support system was just like, you know, you can do that show. You know,
Wow.
you'll be ready. And I was just like, and so it was when I was 11 weeks out, and I was just like, I don't know, because I never in the past that, you know, I've always struggled with
Right.
those last 8 weeks, and it was frustrating. But I told him, I was just like, let's do this. 2 weeks. If I'm where I need to be, then I will. And it just so happened that it was just like, then you contacted me, and I was like, well, in 2 weeks, if I'm where I need to be, I guess I'll be officially announcing it on the Amazon podcast.
This is great. I'm so glad you
So,
announced it here.
but I'm like, I tell everybody, I'm like, because I am habitually superstitious and I'm very routine. It won't be official until the Monday that the contract has to go in. Because you never know what happens. You know,
you signed the contract, right?
Huh?
You signed the contract and everything.
Right. On Monday. Monday, I never, since I've competed, I've never signed the contract until 11:45 before the deadline.
Wow.
Yes. I'm like, I've done it every show, every season. And so it's just
a superstitious thing or just creatures like the way you've always done it? So
I've always done it that way. I'm like, you know, I've never, which was so funny because I'm like, when I first started competing, you know, people was always like, you got to mail it in before the deadline. And I was like, well, there's nothing in the process that says I have to mail it in. There's an email address. I'm just going to email it in, you know? And people are like, well, we didn't get it. I'm like, I have an email that shows that you received.
Yeah, the receipts.
And so that's the whole thing, is just like, you know, I've always mailed it in because my mindset has always been, you never know what's going to happen. I've seen so many people that they sign their contract 2 months before, and then all of a sudden they get sick or they get severely injured. And, you know, when you're at the pro level, you can't back out, you know, unless you have a true medical reason. And I tell people, I was just like, you don't understand. I was like, there's a fine if we back out of a show, and you can't compete until that fine is paid. I was just like, so I'm not going to take a chance of something happening. You know, I was like, it's one of the reasons that I wound up doing Tampa last year, is that I put in that contract just a little too early, and I lost the feeling completely in my leg, and I couldn't do anything about it. You know, I told people I was just like, and so I was like, I can't get a doctor's note. I said, I can't get my doctor's note until it's not going to happen until after the show. I don't know what I've got to do the show, or I'm going to get fined, you know? And so after that, I was just like, I will never allow somebody to convince me to do something that I normally wouldn't do. So, but yeah, I'm like, I'm at a good place. I'm at a very good place. I feel like I know that this is the best look that I'm going to put on the stage. And I'm excited, you know, so I'm just trying to keep my head down, stay focused, make sure that I don't injure myself, you know, make sure I'm coming in healthy, and make sure that I am coming in absolutely divalicious. So bringing a look that, you know, is going to be truly stellar. So I always tell people, you know, my sisters of steel and fans, I'm just like, if you're gonna get on stage, don't get on stage to experience, to have an experience. I said, show up to show out. You know, as simple as that. So that's my goal, is to show up to show out, so that we can put on a show and let people know that this bodybuilding is here. Female bodybuilding is here to stay. I'm just like, regardless of what's happening, you know, the back and forth of And I know that I said that I didn't want to touch upon this, but I will only touch upon it, not go into detail. But, the concern that people are generating about, the division being added and being removed from shows is just like, at the end of the day, there's two sides to that coin. I'm just like, yes, we don't have a lot of shows in the States. I hear that all the time. Oh, we losing all our shows. I was like, no. There's a couple of shows overseas, but if you really love this sport and you really love the division, plan and go overseas and compete. We have a lot of shows. We just can't always expect it to be convenient to compete. I'm like, number one. Number two, I was just like, the amount of money that promoters have to pour into a show. A lot of competitors don't take that in consideration. It's not like they just wake up and, the venue is free and all this stuff. It's just like the license, the amount of time and money they have to put in to organize and get all the divisions on. It was just like, and then the repercussions of what shows up, how it affects the next year for the brand of that show. It has a huge difference. And from a business perspective, you have to take those things into consideration. Right. So I don't get upset about if a show that's had the division all of a sudden I shouldn't say all of a sudden, after years decides to drop the division. It doesn't mean that they won't ever pick it back up, but for whatever their reason is, and I feel like we shouldn't just jump on social media and attack, how about you contact the promoter, right. Or, why was it dropped this season? Is there any possibility that it will come back? Is there anything that the competitors can do to help it? Yeah. This idea of, going after somebody who could be possibly losing money, and that's not to say that, female bodybuilding is making, shows lose money, because I feel like there is a huge following out there that we have enough attention, but something, I think Breon said in one of his posts is that just because we have a lot of fans doesn't mean that those fans are showing up at shows. Right. Doesn't mean that those fans are paying for the pay-per-view, because you also have people who are buying the pay-per-view and then they're streaming it. Right. So, and so that's precisely. So, without the understanding that just like, I understand that you're trying to grow your fan base, right, but you're killing our fan base in relation to trying to stay in shows. And so it's that cause and effect that people don't take into account. And so, I'm like, I just know that, when the season starts, I look at the calendar, and wherever there is a show that's available, then that's what I'm trying to, schedule. I'm not sitting there. I don't zero in on a specific show. I tell people I'm getting on stage when my body says it's time. So whatever show is around that time is the show that I'm planning on doing. So, and that's just myself. But yes, I've decided to jump into the Triple O, and even though I'm still on the fence about doing New York, right? So, but yes,
you may do it anyway. But here's the thing. So behind the scenes, you've been training and in prep, just like a slow drip on a faucet. Then you come on here, and now you're going to the Triple O Dynasty in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Who else you? I mean, besides Andrea Shaw, obviously, and the Triple O Dynasty promoters, Sia Gillian and Whitney. I mean, what was the reaction that you got back once people said, "Hey, she's doing the Triple O"? The official.
You don't understand.
That is.
You're the first person I've told.
Really?
Nobody knows.
But that's right. You just said you haven't sent in your contract. Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So nobody knows. So if they're watching this show,
they tune in live.
Right. If they're watching this show, they know. I'm just like, and what I've always told, a lot of the competitors, because they promote themselves. I'm just like, but now that I've decided, I will start posting about the Triple O, and doing the show and things like that. But yeah, it wasn't until like I had to feel like I was going to be really ready, comfortable, that the old me was back,
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm like, it's technically, like I said, I'm just like, you have breaking news right
There
now.
you go. Breaking news here on Amazon's podcast, Amazon's fitness magazine. And I'm so thankful that you did it and you chose my platform to do it.
Yes.
So this is great. Now, the underlining narratives that's out there, Chelsea Dion is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
She took a year off. You're doing
Yes.
it. You've been gone a year. And then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, Teresa Avancic is the returning champion.
That's true. That's true.
This is going to be a huge show.
Yes, it's going to be. I feel like it's going to be a good show because we're going to have quality. We're going to have quality competitors on the stage, And like I said, Chelsea, Tiana, Teresa, me, and whoever. I'm like, and these are all individuals who do show up and show out. Yeah. They do put on a performance, and so it's going to be. I feel like that if people don't tune in, they're going to miss out. Right. And so it's going to be a great show. And
three big time Olympians.
Yes, yes, three big time Olympians. And even though Tiana has not been to, she always brings a stellar package to the stage. And so I know that she's been spending the last year putting on size and everything. So it's going to be. I'm excited. I'm excited to, number one, I'm excited to get back on stage. Mm-hmm. Number two, I'm excited to see my sisters of steel because, even though the sport itself has a lot of competitors, our circle is small, women's bodybuilding. And so it's so wonderful to see, to connect, mm-hmm. To connect and have that kind of camaraderie and everything that even though we have it online, it's, when we get to see each other in person, it's just something different. So, but yeah, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting. So we'll see.
Between you, Chelsea, and Teresa, I think there's 13 Olympia appearances.
Yeah.
This is huge. I could be wrong, but this is huge. Love that you did it on here. And then Andrea Shaw, is getting the support. It's building, just going into the second year.
Yeah,
so this show is only going to get bigger, and it's one of the first ones, really the first women's bodybuilding show of the season. So
yeah, it is. It is the first bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding show for the season, and it's. Last year, the way that they put on the show, I was happy that when they decided to do the show, they took a year off to promote it and grow it. Because when they put it on, it was beautifully done. And it was so to see women supporting women. Yeah. I'm like, it was wonderful and everything. And so, yes, I'm happy to see that it's back for the second season. It's growing. And so it's going to be a great show. And
it really
what's going to be nice, since we're no longer in the Arnold, it's nice to have something to kick off the year, kick off the season, a quality show to kick off the season. So this early, because that's something that, I think is great. Is just like, and even though we have other shows like the show, the Vancouver Pro, in April, it's later in the year. But the thing is that it's nice to have multiple options, in a month. And so it's nice. It's good. So I'm excited.
I got to ask you, being from Chicago, why contemplate New York versus Chicago? Or could you do them both?
Well, the thing is that New York is closer. So if I'm going to do the triple O, mm-hmm. New York gives me just a small enough amount of rest and the shortest amount of time that I need to maintain the look to mm-hmm. come in, more better for New York, and then take a rest, because my goal is that I want to get an invite to the Master Olympia. And so I want to be able to rest up to bring a stellar look for that show. And so I don't feel that it's, when you get to the level that we are in women's bodybuilding and the type of conditioning that we have to bring to the stage, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It becomes harder, unlike not taken away from the guys, but unlike the guys, you know, with the estrogen and female hormones and everything like that, it gets to a point that the body starts to fight. You know, it wants to, for lack of a better term, it wants to get back to a relaxed state.
Right.
So, and if you don't allow that, then you trying to dial in, you know, for, you know, the next show becomes harder and harder. And so the caliber shows are, you know, our big shows for our division, you know, come in later in the season. So you have to time it correctly. And so that's what it was. I'm like, you know, initially I wanted to do New York and then maybe Chicago, because like, right, that is home for me, you know, but when the new process that I'm going through, nutrition plan and everything, my body just really started just coming in like really fast. You know, sometimes it's better to change the plan, not the goal, but change the plan. You know, and the goal is that I want to requalify for the Olympia. Right. So the plan was to do New York and maybe Chicago, but my body is saying that, okay, we're going to be ready a little earlier. So we need to find something earlier. And so I was initially looking at doing Vancouver, and then they were like, why don't you just do support your sister still who's putting on the show?
Yes.
You know, and so I was just like, right. And that's why that's why I told her, I was just like, okay, that doesn't give me as much time as I'm comfortable with. I was like, but, you know, because at that time, you know, I was around like 10 or 11 weeks. And I was like, I don't know if I can dial it in that, you know, and I don't want to rush. Right. So I was just like, let's see. If I can, then I'll do it. If not, then the original plan was to do New York. And so that was going to be my first show. So I said, if it works out and I can do well, win.
Oh yeah, that's it.
You know, I'm like, then, you know, whether I win or not, there's still a possibility I would do New York.
Yes.
Because for me,
it's still early.
Right. It's still early, number one. Number two, the reason that I would consider it is just one of the issues that I've always experienced coming into this division is consistency. And so the goal would be to show up on the stage with a stellar package consistently, show after show. And so that's the reason, because I know that people are going to ask, well, if you qualify, why would you even bother to do New York? You know, it's just like, because I need to show them.
Right.
That I can bring. Right.
And you still want to get a check on learning as how you progressing.
Precisely. And so I'm just like, it's
a lot of times from the coach's angle, right? That he or she wants to see where you are, because everybody's got to be dialed in at their best at Olympia.
Exactly. And so it's you know, with this being a whole new process for me, it's just that you've got to figure it out. Yeah. You know, and the people don't understand, it's just like, you can't figure it out in development season. You can't figure it out in off season. It's like you technically figure it out during the season, because every show is different. And people that don't realize that are the ones who eventually start not doing well. And I tell people, I'm just like, you can't always do the same process for every show in the same season, because you don't know how your body, if there's certain things that work for the first show, it might not work for the second show.
Right.
You know, or the way that you were eating coming in and the way that you depleted, you might not need to do that for the second show. And so this idea that people they have this routine and they stay with it, and they don't understand, well, I don't understand why she didn't look so great, or, you know, he didn't look so great when he stepped on stage, because you did something that wasn't necessary. You posted a picture of yourself a week before and you looked fabulous. Why did you change it? If it wasn't broke.
Don't fix it.
Right. And so that's what it is that, you know, the process that I'm going through, you know, it's still kind of freaking me out, because like I said, it's new. Everything is new, you know. The way that I've developed my training style, the nutrition plan, everything, you know, the cardio, you know, the timing of everything is different than what I've ever done. And so my body's responding well, but nothing matters. Nothing matters until the moment you step on stage. And so, you know, people always like, oh, she looked great 4 weeks out. Doesn't make a difference. How does she look when What matters, the
On
judges
game
only
day.
care about what you look like when you step in that box
Yeah.
on
On
stage.
game day. That's it.
And so that's the whole thing. And that's why I tell people, I'm just like, it's,
Mhm.
when I signed the contract, that's when it's really real, because now I have to make sure that the dial in process and filling out process is on point.
Mhm.
So, so it's like mad scientists. Okay, let's go through our notes and everything and figure stuff out, and let's try to dial this in and fill you out that you're really showing all the hard work that you put in over the last year and a half. So I'm excited.
Is this the first time going into a show coming off of a major injury? In your case, the car accident, getting ready for a show?
Yes and no.
Right.
I can honestly say, since crossing over to women's bodybuilding,
Mhm.
I have had 2021 after the Olympia, I had to have a hernia surgery.
Yeah.
The next year after that, I had to have foot surgery. So it's like, and then, there was 1 year that nothing happened. And then the next year after that, I had the car accident.
Yeah.
So, but of all of that, I'm like, yes, this is the one that had the largest impact, because I was able to plan, time the surgeries and everything, as soon as I was getting off the Olympia stage, literally I was going in to have my procedures done, because that gave me enough time. My body was in a good place. I could rest, my body could recover, I could recover from the surgeries and everything, and then start my development. So that's why I was always doing a show later in the year. But the accident, that was totally, yes.
Yeah.
This is the first time that I've been through something major like that had a huge impact on my entire body.
Yeah.
That,
so unprepared, and how much of the injury gets in your head with the mental? I mean, you talk about the other injuries, the hernia, the foot, but this was a car accident.
right. I'm like, it
You
got
lost your life, and how did you get your mental ready to prepare for going into prep?
I didn't try to get mentally ready. And that was another problem, because the thing is that in hindsight, once I took the season off and once I stopped being angry about everything, and I will honestly say that I'm not going to even sugarcoat it. I was angry. I was so angry about how the last season went, and just angry at myself, angry at everybody around me, angry at those people who weren't honest with me, because I'm a big believer in, don't sugarcoat it. Tell me the truth. Can I get ready? Am I ready? And this idea of just hoping, that, oh no, I think. No, there's no think. Am I going to be ready? Do I look ready? Because I don't feel like I look ready. Because for me, I have bad body perception. And I think a lot of competitors are like that. You get to a place that you can't see your gains. You're just like, have I put on some improvements, or, do I look the same? And so, I always, refer back to people, just like, I need for you to tell me, I need the truth, because you can't get better if somebody is, blowing, gaslighting you and blowing smoke. And so I tell people, I'm like, I don't have a problem with the truth. I'm an athlete. I've always been an athlete my entire life, from track and field, coming into this sport. And the only way that I improve is that you need to forget about hurting my feelings, because I know that a lot of people just like, well, you tell me, do I look a hot mess? Compared to what I know that I can put on stage, do I look good? Do I look ready? And if I don't let me get on stage. Don't let me contradict what I'm always promoting,
Right.
You show up to show out, or don't show up at all, and so, but this, I'm like, that accident, it did get in my head. And the stress that I started experiencing, because every week I was going through therapy. As I started dialing in, I had to go through therapy every week. But the problem is that, and this, I'm like, the problem is that as long as I was going through therapy, I was doing great. But you get to a point when you're getting ready for a show that you can no longer get any kind of body manipulation. And that was my downfall, because, you're dialing in, you're drying out, you're depleting, and the muscles needed the manipulation to flow right, to set right. And so I'm like, it got to a place that, my body didn't feel right. My posing didn't feel right. Nothing felt right, but I kept trying to power through. But in the back of my mind, it was just like, it doesn't feel right. It was just like, oh, you're just worried. And it's just like, yeah, because it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. I don't feel like Mayla, it's just like, and so I'm like, it had a huge psychological impact on me. And then to top it off, to go through that, because Chicago was, even though Chicago, and I don't take away from anybody at the Chicago Pro, but when I stepped on stage, I'm like, it was bad, because I stepped on stage with no feeling in my left foot. And so in the video, you can see it on my face, and people who came to support me, they were just like, what was going on? I was like, I couldn't feel the stage. I was like, I couldn't feel the stage, and I didn't realize that I was standing on a lump, an uneven part. And so I couldn't activate my leg, and I couldn't figure out why. It's because I couldn't feel, my foot was so numb, my foot was numb that I couldn't feel the stage. And so, and then coming out of that show, thinking that, okay, I can do Tampa, it'll be fine. And a couple of days before Tampa, I lost the feeling completely on my left side of my leg, from my hip all the way down to my foot. And I was just like, I've already signed a contract, and I was just like, but then after that, it was like, I was like, I'm not getting on the stage for Rising Phoenix. I can't. I have to end the season, and so, but yeah, the whole thing got into my head. That literally, there was a point last year, and I will say it honestly, I'm like, I was looking at hanging it up, because I was like, I don't know if I can get it back, and so it took a minute of my friends kind of just saying, you're just going through a valley. It's like, you've told us this, you've told other people this. It's a valley moment.
Yeah.
It's like, and you just need to keep walking. You need to keep coming through. You come out from this fire so much stronger, so much better. And there'll be a different look. There'll be a different mindset from you. They was like, but you just have to keep walking. Do not stop in this valley. But yeah, I'm just like, there was months that, and that's what people are like, why did you go dark online? I was like, because I was so angry, and I was so upset, and I was so heartbroken, and I was just so lost. I didn't have the energy to have another person, even though, like, my followers and my fans and my friends, they had all the kindness in their heart. And it's like, oh, you did so well. And it was just like, I wasn't trying to do well. I said I was trying to do spectacular. And I said, but I thank you for what you're trying to do. But that's not what I need right now. I need to go in my cave and lick my wounds and keep walking, keep walking, and let the Lord help me, help myself, of recalibrating my mind and getting back to who I used to be. And so it took, like I said, it took to January to get to that place. And so that's why recently I put up a post that people had to somebody reminded me of who I was, and it was like, and so it was just like, Mayla's coming back. I'm back, and I'm excited. But yeah, it did a huge mental number on me the whole season last year. So I'll tell myself, never again, never again.
And it's so great that you are back. Good for the sport, good for the division. And so many times when athletes get injured, hurt, they want to go ahead and immediately make that decision, well, I'm retired, instead of just waiting. Because do you feel that you never want to make a decision in an emotional state or after something that just happened?
Oh, definitely. No, I'm like, I'm a huge believer of that. I have people that, after the Olympia, at the end of every season, people are like, so what are you going to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
I was just like, right now, what I want to do is get back to just simply enjoying what I love to do. And that's just lifting. I was just like, and if the fire is still in me,
yes,
I said, I'll be back. I think that's the whole thing, is that people, a lot of times people do it out of obligation. It was just like, you can't do this because, other people want you to do it, because we have to get up at 4 a.m. to do fasted cardio, because you have a full day of work and activity, and then to train, and then to have your food, like your calories lowered, and then to have to do evening cardio, and then to practice your posing, and then, unlike when I was in figure and everything, then to practice your morning routine and your night routine, and to get up and do it over and over. Other people can't do that. And that's what I tell people. This is not about motivation. It's about discipline. It's about consistency. And if you don't have it in your spirit, even though all you want to do is die when the alarm goes off at 4 a.m, it's just like, if you can't pull yourself out of bed and say, let's get to it, then you don't need to be doing this. And that's what I tell people. I was just like, I need to know that my fire, I tell people, it's just like, if you didn't hear what the Lord told me my vision was, I don't expect you to understand my grind. And as I tell people, I'm just like, you don't know my vision. And I'm the only one that the Lord told it to. And that's what drives me, that fire, that passion of trying to bring that to fruition, trying to bring the Mayla that I see in my mind out, present, trying to accomplish my goals. I'm just like, and so that's what I tell people, I'm just like, and that doesn't come from motivation. That comes from consistency and dedication and habit of just, no matter what happens, no matter how I feel, I get up and do what I need to do to keep moving towards that goal. And so, I'm just like, that's how I've been every year. But last year was the first year that it took much longer because the fire was real dim. The fire was real dim for a long time. And it took a long time for that fire to grow enough that I was like, I'm going another season. And so,
And I'm glad you didn't, make that decision that, well, I'm done, based on a significant event, such as the car accident. But I'm speaking from a fan perspective.
And I appreciate that. But I'm like, you're right. I'm just like, it's too many times that people make that decision in a moment, and it's just like, it's like, you don't do it in an emotional moment. You have to allow yourself to get a different perspective, to look at it from a different angle. And so that's what I needed to be able to look at it from a different angle. It just took me a while to be able to do that. And you are frozen.
Am I frozen? Uh-oh.
I'm like, so I don't know how that's affecting your show.
No, I'm still hearing you okay. Let's keep rolling.
Okay, so,
I'm not hold you too much longer. But I did want to, what's your coach been telling you? What's the feedback that he's been, who is your coach?
I don't have one.
So what was that conversation like with you, Coach?
You're right. I'm like, the conversation like that with me, I was just like, okay, now. I was just like, okay, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I knew was in me. This is it. So, I'm just like, and I would be honest with you, it took my dear friends, Lavika and Charcelyn, to convince me, because I actually do contest prep.
Right.
And the one thing that, like, my clients and everybody always ask me, why do you always hire a coach? And it was just like, because I pour so much into the process. Like, I truly believe in a custom program. And so I don't feel that you can do that when you have a ton of clients. And so, because everybody's different, especially when it comes to women, there's life environment, there's life that's happening, and other things, and hormones, and the stress of just everything else that have a huge impact on how women dial in. And so, to do that with clients, and I only take a handful of clients, I have people on wait lists, and I'm just like, no, because unlike a lot of coaches, I compete at a very high level. So I'm just like, there's a time period where I need to focus, and do what my coach told me. But a lot of times I would get to a place where we didn't see eye to eye. Mm-hmm. And that would cause additional stress for me, because someplace in the back of my mind, it was just like, I know this isn't going to work the way it needs to.
Right.
I'm trying to trust the process, but there's something in my mind that's saying, because people don't understand, there's more than one way to prep. That's why I tell people, stop worrying about what your friend and her coach is doing, or what your boyfriend and his coach is doing. There's more than one way to prep for a show. And if what your coach has you doing works for your body, then trust that process.
Right.
And if it's not working, then have enough wherewithal, because you're paying them for a specific service to accomplish a specific goal.
True.
And if you're not moving towards that, then you need to be adult enough to have that hard conversation. And that doesn't mean that you don't trust the process. It just means that you're concerned about the direction you're going. Now, I say that with a grain of salt, because if you're new to this, you need to be quiet. Don't talk about, well, on TikTok I saw stop. But if you're a seasoned competitor, if you're a seasoned athlete and you've been doing this for years, and you're trying to pour in knowledge of your body into the process, and that's being ignored, that's an issue. Especially if it's being ignored and what your concern came to fruition. So, but yeah, I'm like, I've, the things that really work for my body, the things that I was always concerned about. Like for me, one of the biggest things is filling out, because my waistline is so small. You can't shove a bunch of food in me 2 hours before the show.
Right.
I'll look pregnant. My waist, there's no place to hide it.
Right.
I was like, I have a sluggish digestive system. Right. It's like I have a sluggish digestive system, and you can't hide. If you put, 500 grams of rice in trying to, to fill me out. No, because the thing is that even if you fill me out, all people are going to see is the pooch that is in the midsection.
Yeah. So your waist is blown out.
Right. And I said, and it's different. I was like, if you have a wide waistline and it's blown out, I was like, but when you get on stage with a 23-inch waistline and it's blown out, you can't see anything else. And that's what I tell people. I said, it's not going to matter. And I've actually had Sandy Williamson to bring it to my attention, because I was on stage one time and her and Becky, they were judges. And I get on stage and it's trying to fill me out. And it was like, we shouldn't do this. It was just like, okay, I'm going to try. And literally I had a small pooch on when I stepped on stage, because the thing is that my last name is Ash. I'm always going to be the first one going up. And I was there's no time to digest this. Well, you need to fill out. They're not going to care that I'm full if I'm bloated. And the second I walked on stage and I was doing my performance, I'm looking at them and I'm looking at them look at my stomach. And like after the show, I came up to them and I was just like, real tough. I saw you. And I literally came, I was like, Sandy, I saw you looking at me. And I was looking at you looking at me. And I was like, and I know you were looking at my stomach. They were just like, you had a pooch. They was like, it's hard to unsee that. It was like, but then, by the time you came back, after the performances and everything at the night show and everything, it was gone. I was just I was like, they was like, that was so, they was like, but it's hard to unsee that. It's like every time you turned around and you turned to the side, it was just like, but anyway. So
you do your own posing? Do you have a posing coach?
No, I'm like, I do my own posing. I'm like, but I do work with, over the years, I've worked with seasoned coaches, other coaches, to give me another eye. So especially, when I put on additional size, and because I'm a big believer in, I love the artistry of posing, and I love to try to present my physique in the best light and in an artistic way. So I'm always trying to incorporate new poses, new angles. And then whatever is going to help showcase my strengths, when it comes to the mandatories or traditional poses, I always want to make sure that I'm hitting them in a way that works. And so there are time periods that, I'll get to a place in the season that I'm just like, I need another eye because I think this looks right, but I'm not really sure. And, I usually will go to people that I trust to help tweak me. So, and I've used various people over the years, because a lot of times it's not that I need like major, but it's just like, I need somebody to help me.
Second set of eyes.
Right. It's like, is this the foot angle? Because I'm like, you watch the show and a simple thing of a foot being 5 inches to the left or the right will have a huge impact on the flow and the shape of a pose. Right. And so with my OCD, I'm like, that's the stuff I'm critical like that. I'm just like, I think that I can make this look a little better, that I'll get caught up with trying to find it, and so I need somebody to help me lock in so that I won't keep, going back and forth of over processing, a thing. So, but yes, anyway, but yes, I'm like, so it is. I'm kind of excited. I'm just like, this is the first time that I've done this. I'm not saying that I will always be at this point, and I'm fortunate that I have my sis of steel, Mayla in my corner if I need a little feedback.
There you go.
Right. And so I'm just like, I'm at a good place right now. I'm just like, but I talked to her when I was on the fence of whether or not I was going to do the show. And I asked, I was just like, if I get to a place that I'm struggling or I'm concerned, she was like, yes, she was like, I'm here for you. So
she just made her own major decision.
Yeah, I know. And it was like, that was right around the time, like, I contacted her and I just found out. And I was like, oh my God, and I was like, I was calling you I was like, this is kind of crash. I was but I'm calling you because I'm finally trying to figure this out on my own. I was just like, and, I need that second set of eyes or just a little insight if I'm going in the right direction, because, all it takes is 1 or 2 wrong moves coming into peak week and you can ruin your entire look. And so, right now that's my biggest concern, but that was my biggest concern, not anymore. But anyway.
Well, it's great that you always can reach out to each other and y'all have a good camaraderie that people don't see. They just assume y'all back there fighting or all catty and everything.
And that's one of the things I love about this division is that, when I was in figure and even in women's physique, there was a level of cattiness. It was so funny because people loved you as long as you weren't in their division. But the second you were in their division, it was like, oh, so, now you don't talk to me. Nobody wants to go out to dinner anymore or after the show. But in the division of bodybuilding, I think it's because we're such a small group. It's just like, it's nice. Especially now that it's come back, it's just like, because I don't know obviously how it was before it left, but now that it's come back, it's when I crossed over, I was really concerned about that because, I was like, oh, the stress of being the new person in a division and, the cattiness and, Tina Williams, she was the first person that when I did New York, she came up to me and she was like, welcome to the family, sis. And I'm like, I literally started crying, because it was so sweet. We're about to step on stage and battle it out, but she took the time, to see, that you are completely gone. I hope you're still there. Glenn? He is gone. Okay. And this is still running. I'm not sure how we need to do this. So, unfortunately, okay, I'm not sure. I know this is still going live, but we have obviously lost the host of the show. So I'm not sure how he's going to handle this. I will give him 20 more seconds and we might have to sign off of this episode, folks. So hopefully he will come back on. But if not, he's either going to have to reactivate the actual podcast, or we might be wrapping this up. So we're going to give it just a couple more seconds. And regardless, for all you guys who tuned in, I do thank you so much. Hopefully, you've enjoyed the show. And okay, I'm going to actually sign out, but I will talk to you guys real soon. And Glenn, thank you very much for the opportunity of coming on your show and telling my story. And I will see you guys later. Mayla Ash, IFBB Pro and Olympian female bodybuilder. See you soon. Peace.
Got me?
Yes, there we go.
Okay. Well, that's what it is. That's the beauty of going live. But the live is always genuine. And I got Spectrum, so they're having a bad day. Mayla, it's been great to talk to you. I don't want to hold you up. I don't want to risk us getting cut out anymore. I'll leave it with this last question. What's your feeling on women's bodybuilding is for this season as a whole? How do we keep it going? What do we need to do from you being a perennial pro, a 7-time Olympian? So when you speak, people are always going to listen.
You know, I don't know about that, but I'm just like I said, I do have my own voice, and so. But the reality is that I still think since women's bodybuilding has returned, we're still trying to. The division is still trying to find its way,
Right.
and so I feel like fans and everything were a little harsh on us when we first got back, failing to remember that, if they really wanted us to bring in a stellar package and really perform at shows, that takes time,
Right.
and so you had a lot of us who were taking this opportunity very seriously, that we were taking the time to make sure we were bringing stellar packages. And it's gotten to the point that every season it's gotten better and better at most of the shows. And so I think that we still have the possibility of staying and growing, continuing to grow, because a lot of women are seeing the beauty of it. They're understanding that the division is not about just getting big for the purpose of getting big. It's about filling out your frame and bringing a beautiful package to the stage, but we have to understand that we have to also do our part. So a lot of times, and I know I'm going to get flack on this, a lot of times you have women in the sport who are concerned about the convenience of, in the past, all the shows were in the US. Mm-hmm. Well, we're a worldwide sport. So it's really not fair that we force so much financial burden on our sisters of steel who are overseas. And so the year that they kind of divided it up, that it was half the shows were overseas, half of them are here, all I would hear is people complaining, all the shows are gone. They're not gone. We have the same amount of shows, just some of them overseas. Right. And if you're only going to focus on the one show that you've always done over the years, or the one show that's in your backyard, right, then maybe it's time for you no longer to do this sport, because if we want this to grow, we all have to carry the burden. It's one of the reasons that, on a podcast years ago, I told people, I was just like, I'm going to start doing shows overseas. I'm just like, because we have to connect. We have to connect. We have to grow. We have to have the fans show love, not only for the European part of the division, but the American. And they can't do that if we're not showing love as coming over, number one. Number two, we have to do more than just promote ourselves. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you have a situation where, and I get it because you have your fans, but if we want the sport to, have the shows, we have to promote the shows. Mm-hmm. So, let people know. I'm just like, tell your fans to not only just, hope your fans like your pictures, but, push for them to log in, to buy the pay-per-view. If they're in the area, show up at the show. Right. I tell my friends, look, if you're in the area and you show up at the show, stop me. We'll take a picture. We'll take a selfie, because I appreciate the fact that you took the time to contribute to the show, because without you, there wouldn't be us. Right. And so that's the whole thing, is that we have to, and even though a lot of times I get that this is an individualized kind of sport, but if we want it to grow, we also have to do our part. That doesn't say that there's not a lot wrong. There's a level of unfairness, for lack of a better term, in relation to our division, in relation to the female sector of the sport. But if all you're going to do is scream and complain, I tell people, I'm like, you got to do more than complain. Suggest some solutions. I'm like, and some of the solutions shouldn't always be, well, the league needs to and the promoter needs to. What do we as athletes need to do? And so, yeah, we all need to come together. We can't expect people to save us. We have to save ourselves. Right. We have to save ourselves. And that means that we need to come to the table, not with an attitude, not with anger and vinegar, but saying, okay, what do we need to do? That's the question that, yes, you're upset. Like when Arnold got rid of women's physique and figure, nobody came to the table saying, okay, what do we need to do to bring it back? Is there a possibility to bring it back? It was just the entire time, it was just like, I can't believe they got rid of it. What am I supposed to do? And it's just like, and so I feel like it's the same thing now. It's just like, what do we need to do to make sure, to help us to continue to grow? What do the promoters need? Nobody's ever asking that. Why did you let it go? Right. What do we need to do for it to come back? And then execute it. Because a lot of times there are shows that we didn't bring our best look, and it hit that show hard. Yeah. That in the response, they let it go.
And then the number of competitors that showed up.
Right. Yeah. I'm just like, people's, because that was something I always tell them, just like, there's never a reason. And this is the athlete in me. A lot of people, they don't understand the whole mindset of competitive sports. This is the athlete in me. To show up at a show, a pro level show, and there's only two people or only one person that's there, and you get an Olympia qualification.
Yeah, that's a tough swallow. Yeah.
And that's my whole thing. I was just like, and that's not to say that, and it was different when we had the point system, because my mindset was just like, you shouldn't get an Olympia qualification. You should get the first prize. You should get the money. And because you're the only one showing up, maybe you should get additional points, because now you got to compete again.
Right.
But the idea of, somebody, wins because it was two people, and one of the persons, that was their first show ever, and they just finished with nationals, and it was just like, and you've been a veteran doing it for years, and now you're just promoting, oh, I competed and I earned an Olympic qualification. Did you really compete? Did you really compete? Or did you, And so, well, the thing is that, and so a lot of people, and I'll be honest with you, I'm like, I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack from this and everything, but this is no slight to any competitor. Right. This is somebody who's been an athlete her entire life, that it says something about that. I'm just like, if you want to compete, if we want this to keep proving, or to get better, to grow, or change, we have to start pushing for solutions and not just pointing blame. Right. And if we've done everything that we can do and all of a sudden it doesn't make it, then at least we know, come hell or high water, we as a community, a totality, everybody did their part to try to save it. And so that's the thing that kind of disturbs me, it kind of bothers me, is that we get people who, and everybody likes the gossip and the drama and everything. And so, they get up there and they complain and they pull up something, and they only see the negativity in the statement. And that's what they and then also that's what everybody's focusing on. Is just like, well, did you read all of it? Or did you hear everything that he said? Or did you before you posted that and got all these people on your bandwagon, and they're reposting what you're doing, and you got more followers? Did you ever send an email or just, follow up and say, hey, I saw your article, I saw your interview, and you're doing this. Can you help us understand why and what we could have done, or what we can do as athletes to make a change or to help move it in a different direction? And so I just feel like that we need to stop sensationalizing the problems and start trying to work together and engage those key entities, the league, the promoters, even sponsors. We don't ever get sponsors, but the reality is that, we don't push, people around us, the companies around us. There's people who have sponsors that sponsor them with free protein or whatever. Why don't you ask, hey, would you be willing to promote to sponsor a show? Right. Maybe not the entire show, but maybe add to the pot of a show. Just anything.
Or what have you. Yeah.
Precisely. So that's the whole thing, is that I just feel like we don't make that kind of effort as athletes. And I think that that's something that needs to happen, because it affects all of us. Of course, it's going to affect the female bodybuilding division more than the promoters, because they have other divisions to rely on. The league is always going to be league. It's going to keep moving on. But if we want to see change, we got to be a part of that. We got to be a part of the conversation. We got to be a part of the solution, and we have to think out of the box to do it. In this day and age, we can't be looking back to how things were. We got to find new ways to make this happen. And I know this has been long, but for example, nobody thought pay-per-view. But nobody thought pay-per-view. When the pay-per-view first started, nobody's ever going to watch. Ooh, when the pandemic happened, all of a sudden, and so the whole thing is just, there's old mindsets that we've got to think outside the box, and we've got to, in a professional way, push the idea of like, let's look at old ways are not going to open new doors.
Right.
So let's start looking at new ways to make things happen. You know, there's a beauty in our sport. There's a beauty in our division. You know, there's such an aesthetic beauty and just artistry in our division that
the fan base is there.
Right. And so that's the whole thing, is that we need to find a way to get that out there. We need to get a way to get people to look at our division differently. That's not to say that there's nothing wrong with how, the view. I get it. Muscle is sexy, and I'm thankful for all those who find that muscular women are beautiful, and desirable. But it's more than that. You see a woman with a high density of muscle who can flow beautifully on stage. That is living art.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the whole thing, is just like, that's one of the things that I've always tried to build my brand, my look on. It's just like, yes, I might be sexy, but I'm not sexual. I'm like, there's beauty in what I have, my package, my look. And so that's what I'm always trying to push, is that, women's bodybuilding isn't a sexual division. It's a sexy division, because being buffed and beautiful is sexy. It's beautiful. And so I just feel like there's a rebranding. There's a mindset that needs to happen. There's an idea that needs to move forward of, what do we need to do that's different for us to take our division in a different direction, for it to be viewed in a different light. Because if it's viewed in a different light, it can become more mainstream. If it can become more mainstream, there are sponsors, there are companies that could look at us differently. And that's the whole thing, is that we need to show ourselves in a way that people don't look at us, that have never looked at us, that they give us the opportunity. And then we can't waste it. There's a lot of times that we get an opportunity and people abuse it. They take advantage of it. I feel like that's the reason we lost the ambassador program with the Wings of Strength, is that there was a beautiful opportunity to promote the division, to promote the sport, to promote the Wings of Strength, and people squandered it to the point it was just like, why is he pouring money into this ambassador program? You screamed and hollered, you never had an opportunity of sponsorship, and now that it's here, you're pissing it away.
Right.
And so that's the whole thing, is just like, it breaks my heart, because I don't understand how people don't see, that we have been giving little trinkets of opportunities and we're just throwing them away.
Haven't taken advantage of it.
Right.
It's somewhat feeling entitled for whatever reason. I can see that as well.
And I get it. I'm like, the sport, I'm like, it's how the sport is. We have all these fans, we have people, and it can be kind of overwhelming, but the reality is that if you don't always remember, as athletes and competitors in this sport, if we don't always remember that it's because of them that we wouldn't exist. And that's the thing I feel like gets lost, is this, like, you didn't do this on your own. It's because of the foundation that this platform, that you'll be able to present yourself, that this entity that is you exists. And if you're going to neglect it, you can't complain if it slowly starts to deteriorate and it disappears. So anyway, I know there's going to be tons of flack in my inbox. I try not to present, but we're at a point in this sport that, I feel like that I finally need to speak up about it. And so,
it doesn't, that you did, a rebranding and a rethought process, that you're not just seen in a negative narrative as you look like a man or you're just a sexual object.
Right. And I get it. Look, women, I'm like, that's life. We're always going to be sex sales. I get that. Never saying I would, but you can be, like I said, you can be sexy without being sexual, and that's the whole thing, is I feel like people are so concerned about trying to get more likes that they push the limit in the wrong direction, and instead of trying to focus on getting more likes from a different demographic that can see the beauty in what you present, and stop trying to go for the easy like, and so, but, like I said, Right.
And there's no mic to it. You are sexy, but
So,
you're seen as much more than that because you got a lot between the ears, and a lot of people, and some people are intimidated by that. I mean, you're in the industry, you're a project program manager, and a lot of people are intimidated by that. And then when you got muscle too, they can't handle
oh
it.
yeah.
That's
Well,
not
trust me, I'm
your
like,
fault. That's their problem.
I've spent enough time in this world dealing with that,
Yeah.
to the point that, oh, well, you don't want to get too big. No, I don't want to get too big. I want to get as beautiful as possible. I want to fill out my frame. And if that's my choice, that's my choice. And if you have a problem with it, that's a you situation. It has nothing to
Exactly.
do with me. And it took me years to get to that point. And like I said, I'm happy with how I look. I love me. I love the look that I've developed. And I think that my muscle is sexy. And I think that I'm phenomenally beautiful and buffed.
You
And that
are.
there's no shame in it. And there are people out there who don't like it. And I'm okay with that. I'm finally okay with that because I know that someplace in this world, there are people out there who think that I am a living work of art of beauty.
I
And for
do.
those people, I'm thankful.
And
And
I'm
if
going to
I
get you on
inspire
the
those
cover of
young girls
Amazon's
who
Fitness.
don't look And if I inspire those young girls who don't look like rail thin supermodels to let them know that, yes, you are beautiful and you will be appreciated when the time is right, but don't lose your shine because you walk to a different drum. I'm like, then I've done what I needed to do because I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have that because it wasn't acceptable to be muscular. It wasn't acceptable for a woman in track and field to have that kind of that body mass. And so now it's just like, there's so many women now because of social media. There's so many young girls who get to a place of self-hatred because of what they see online. And so if some of us, especially women's body, if we could take that time to let them know, you don't have to be sexual to be beautiful. You can be beautiful. You don't have to change. You don't have to hate yourself. There is a community out here that gets you and thinks that you are shining bright like a diamond and you need to keep shining. So on that note, I will let us wrap this up. So Glenn, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Get
Happy
my story out.
belated birthday.
Thank
Happy
you very
belated
much.
birthday. And we still got to keep talking and work out the logistics because you definitely need to be on the cover of Amazon's Fitness magazine. Just
Thank
saying,
you
it's been
very
like a
much.
year and a half. I think since the magazine started, I've been talking.
I know that's what I was gonna say. That's why I'm like, I made the commitment this year. I was like, let me go ahead and contact Glenn. Look, do you still want me? Because I'm like, I'm gonna do better. So yes, we will. We'll work it out that I will do my shoot. So and get with you. But I appreciate this opportunity of you allowing me to get my voice out, to speak my truth, and to make my official announcement of I will be competing this year in 2025. So thank you very much.
Triple O Dynasty.
Yes.
Mayla Ash is competing in 2 weeks. And
yes.
undercover, behind the scenes, covered up in all that jersey and everything. So you can't see nothing. And she's bringing a better package in a whole new stage presence that we can't wait to see.
I'm gonna be honest with you. The reason I'm covering up is that I'm like, I feel like, you know what? If people, even though every now and then I'm going to give a sneak peek coming into the show, but I tell people, I'm just like, hey, look, you want to see what I look like?
Come to the show.
Come to the show. Buy the pay-per-view.
This ain't free. Yeah.
This is my version of trying to support the show. You want to see what I look like? Show up at the show. Buy the pay-per-view. It's just like, here's a sneak peek. But until then,
here's a sneak peek. There she is.
You want to see the rest of it? Show up. Buy the pay-per-view.
Thank you, Mayla. Appreciate you. Take care.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And all of his fans, I appreciate you guys logging in.
Take care. Mayla Ash is on her way. You heard it. Breaking news here first on Amazon's Fitness Magazine podcast. She's doing the Triple O Dynasty in 2 weeks. And so it's going to be an amazing show now as now Mayla Ash is in the mix. Can't wait to see it. Teresa Avancic, returning champion. Chelsea Dion, who also took a year off. She's back in it. First show of the year, women's bodybuilding, Triple O Dynasty, and Mayla Ash is going to be there. Welcome to everything that you may have seen and heard. I really appreciate all the new subscribers, those who subscribe to the website, as well as the YouTube channel. And as I said, still getting over it. Internet still seasoning out there, but we got it done. So please, when you watch the pre-recorded, watch all of this in its entirety and know that, we lost internet connection, but got Mayla back. And the big announcement is that she is doing the Triple O Dynasty as her first inaugural show of the 2025 season. She is back. I'm Glenn Young. I'll make sure that you always subscribe, celebrate the female physique, and subscribe to AmazonsFitMag.com. The March issue of Amazon's Fitness Magazine is out, featuring Nikki Politi on the cover and a special article written by Teresa Vancic, Women's Bodybuilding Under Threat. So you definitely want to go ahead and start pre-ordering this and buying this now. The March issue of Amazon's Fitness Magazine. And of course, I'm currently shooting for the May anniversary issue of Amazon's Fitness Magazine. Who's going to be on the cover? Who knows? But we're going to keep doing it. And thanks for all your support. Until then, we'll see you next time. I'm Glenn Young. Celebrate the female physique. Subscribe to AmazonsFitMag.com.